Welcome back, everyone. You can take your places, please, and we'll proceed with the next presentation. This is a presentation of the Bilbao e-tool by Jasper Quenzel of BG Bao. I'll let you translate that into English.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, everybody, and thanks again for the invitation today. Yes, as already said, my name is Jasper Quenzel. I work for the BG Bau, the Berufsgenossenschaft der Bauwirtschaft, which translates to Employers Liability Insurance Association for the Construction Industry. Yeah, it's quite a German word. Yes, today I want to give a very brief introduction into the e-tools we have been, or we are providing or offering to the construction industry, and a more in detail introduction to a project that we had for about 2 years until February last year, called STB Transfer. Yes, but first of all, the introduction into our e-tools. This is our website. It's called Wingis. wingisonline.de is the URL. Just like here, and add an online.de, and then you get to this website. And here we have different functionality. Yes. First of all, there is the Gefahrstoffsuche, which translates to search for hazardous substances. And here you can simply input a name of a product used in the construction industry, or the name of a substance which is used in the construction industry, and you will find information on how to use and how to handle this substance safely. Then we have the GIS codes. The GIS codes are, it's kind of difficult to explain. These are groups of products of similar hazards and similar composition and similar application. So we say if you paint with paint A and then with another paint B, the hazards will be similar, very similar, nearly the same. So you have to take the same measures to work safely. Then we have the mobile version of the GISBau, of the Gefahrstoffsuche, of the search for hazardous substances. We have a glove database where you can find information regarding chemical gloves. For example, how long which concrete or which specific glove is usable with what substance. We have MyWingis, which is our tool for the preparation and maintenance of a dangerous materials register. We provide a calculation tool for dangerous goods, whether or not you are above or below 1,000 points. If you are above, you have to take a lot more stuff into account when transporting dangerous goods. And we have MyBetran, which is our tool for the preparation of work instructions. The most important tool is, and the eldest tool is the Gefahrstoffsuche, the search for dangerous substances. Here you can find general information regarding hazardous products and substances in German and in English. And these general information also can be used as a template or as templates for the risk assessment. Nearly all the information you need for a complete risk assessment is found in these. There are, for each product we know of, 16 languages, work instructions in 16 languages prepared by our experts, and these are backed up by concrete measurements. This is quite unique because we can say very safely that if you handle a substance in this or that way, there you will be above or below some occupational limits, and we can back this up with measurements on the workplace. And this is especially important because most of the construction industry companies aren't really able to do measurements themselves, so somebody has to provide them for them. We do all this by, as I already said, grouping products into these GIS codes. So we have information for about 20,000 products, and we do that by grouping these products into GIS codes. So if we get an, as I already said, a paint A and a paint B, and they have a similar composition and labeling and stuff like that, and we group them into one GIS code. This is just a combination of numbers and letters, and you can find the means on how to work with this product safely. And we provide this as a local installation only for Windows and online, as I have shown you, and in the mobile tools. Yes, that's it on the slide. That's everything I want to tell you today about the e-tools of Gisbau. Now I want to introduce you to our project STB Transfer. And the project starts with another project that we had, a sector-specific pool for safety data sheets. It's called Govmental Bau, which is an abbreviation for Gefahrstoffkommunikation in der Bauwirtschaft. And yes, it's a project which involved all the stakeholders in the whole supply chain, and its mainly aim was to develop a pool for the sector where you can find all the safety data sheets for all the products that are used in the construction industry. And the main motivation for this was that you have to archive the safety data sheets for 10 years, and that's not very easy for the small and medium companies in the construction industry. So we said we will do this for the companies, and they can find all the safety data sheets on our website. The links will be safe for at least 10 years, and they will be compliant. We started with Govmental Bau in 2016. This is the URL where you can find it. It's just like WinGIS Online. There's I don't know how it's called in English, a field where you can simply type in the name of a product, and then you will find the safety data sheet. But as we all know, it's not only the archiving of the safety data sheet. You have to use the data which is found in the safety data sheet as well. For example, you have to provide working instructions or the transportation documentation, and you have to do your waste management, and all of that you have to do on basis of the data which is found in the safety data sheet. And yes, you have, and in order to do that, you have to type the data or copy the data manually from the safety data sheet. And this is the thing we wanted to tackle in the project. We wanted to establish an electronic exchange format for the content of the safety data sheet. And on this slide, you can see the project partners. On the left, there are the hazardous substances information systems, the BG Bau, where I work, and the BG RCI, which is the equivalent for the raw material and chemical industry in Germany. In the middle is our industry partner, the DAW, which is the third largest manufacturer for building paints in Europe. And on the right, you can see our IT consultants, the company Zipro, developed together with DAW a interface in SAP EHS. And the ESCA is, they have a very long, very deep knowledge in the electronic exchange for safety data. This slide is just to show you our timeline, and we had two main phases in the project. The technical preparation of the format and networking and implementation. Networking also, of course, means promotion. Each of these phases took about a year. So what have been our prerequisites? The first prerequisite we had was that we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to use a format that was already there. In Germany, we had two formats, XML formats, and there was EDAS, which has been partially established in Germany, especially in the automotive industry, and the at the time relatively new SDS-COM XML, which was newer and therefore better suited for the regulational changes that came around this time with REACH and CLP. And because of that, we decided to use SDS-COM XML. But our second prerequisite was that we didn't want to exchange the full safety data sheet, but only subset, because the main motivation was that it's far too difficult to exchange the whole safety data sheet in one go, especially if nothing like this has ever been done before. We had the impression that it would be far easier to just exchange a subset, and this was feasible because we had very specific target recipients for the data. The target and sorry, I have to say we defined two subsets. One for the one called SDS-COM XML BAU, which had the target recipients in the Bilbao and the end users, the construction industry, the craftsmen, and SDS-COM XML Chem, which targeted formulators, people in the middle of the supply chain. Yes, here you can see that we decided for SDS-COM XML. This slide shows the differences in the content of the two subsets. As you can see on the right side, the whole safety data sheet contains about 1,700 data fields. And for SDS-COM XML BAU, we only needed 127 data fields to transport all the data that we needed. This is because, as I already said, we have a very special or unique way to provide our construction men with information. We have this product groups, this GIS codes, and the experts at the Bilbao can decide on the basis of this 127 data points in which GIS code a product has to be included. And obviously, the chemical industry needs a lot more data. Therefore, they have 78 data fields. In Germany, we have about 30 companies which develop software for the preparation of safety data sheets. That's not really a lot. But even though this is not a big number, there hasn't been any standard exchange format. And we wanted to tackle this by, in the first place, develop this format and then bring the companies to implement an interface in their software. And yes, we did this by funding them. We had a little bit of money by the Federal Ministry for, yes, I should know this, Economy and Technology. And we funded some interfaces in some of these software solutions. After we developed a exchange format, this SDS-COM XML BAU and Chem, we had to decide on how to transport this data. Because if we had an XML data and a PDF data and send this to the construction man, they will probably look like this person here on the slide. They will be very confused. They have two files. One is not really readable, just some gibberish. And even in the chemical industry, which might be more technophile, it would be quite complicated to handle 2 documents instead of 1. You have to reference one and the other one, and yeah, it's just complicated. And luckily, we found a very elegant way while we did this project, and it's called PDF A3. A PDF A3 is just a normal PDF document in which you can embed files. And if you have such a file, such a PDF A3 file, you get this little paper clip in the upper left corner of your Adobe Reader. And when you click on it, you can see this sidebar, and there are the files which are embedded in this PDF document. In this case, there are 2 files. One is the XML data file, and the other one is the XML data file viewed through a style sheet, so it's a little bit more human readable, so everybody can see what kind of data is integrated in this PDF file. So we think this is a very elegant solution, because now the people who don't want to use the XML just do what they always did. They print the document and just do whatever they want with it. And the people who are a little bit smarter can use the data they can find in the PDF document. These are the 10 companies which have an interface implemented in their software, an export interface, I must say. Not every of this software solution has an import interface implemented. I want to especially point out the company PES, Ingenieurgesellschaft, because they didn't get any money for this. They did this on their own because they believed in this solution. They wanted to do this on their own. We didn't have enough money, and they didn't have the time then. Yes, but now they had, and they finished their interface about 3 months ago. What about the piloting? The piloting was done in 3 stages. The first stage was done at the software developer. They just developed their software and tested it themselves. In the second stage, the software developers sent examples out of their system to us, and we did some basic testing, looked for bugs, and checked the compatibility with our own system. And in the third stage, we had some pilot users, 2 for every software company, which tested the interface in their own system and sent the data to us, where we then again had a look whether or not the data was okay. And after that, it's of course not done, because you have to maintain the interfaces. That brings me to the maintenance. Maintenance is done twofold. There is the SDS-COM XML steering committee, which consists of different stakeholders from different nations in the EU. They decide about the general direction of SDS-COM XML. For example, if there is a politically motivated change in the format, they decide whether or not we would do this. Everybody can join. You have just to Google it. There will be contact information, and then you just write them if you want to join. Everybody is welcome. The technical maintenance is done on GitHub, which is a version control system for software, and there the developers maintain the format. They discuss changes which are technically motivated, and yes, this too is open for everybody. You just have to visit this link, and there's a lot of discussion going on about some changes, not only for the subsets, SDS-COM XML BAU or SDS-COM XML CHEM, but for the whole SDS-COM XML, which can transport all the data in the safety datasheet. How did we promote this solution? Here you can already see a photograph It should only, it doesn't matter. This slide might be a little bit broken. Anyway, we visited exhibitions and trade fairs. There it is. We publish we publish articles in trade journals, and of course, this all we do not only for the solution we developed in SDP Transfer, but for all our tools. And there are workshops at the software companies, at the manufacturers of chemicals, and trade guilds, especially, where we get to teach the youngsters on how to use our solutions. And the last point is that we promote this solution indirectly in our own software. If you cannot find a product in Wingis or in GEFCOM, there will be a pre-formulated letter which you can send your supplier, and in order to motivate them to send the safety data sheets into GEFCOM BAU, into Wingis, and all this solutions that we offer. What are our first impressions? When I talk about this slide, I have to correct the number in the first line. This is copied from another presentation. I didn't update it. I forgot about it. We have about double the amount of PDF files imported since the end of the project. About 1,600 PDF A3 documents have come to us since then. It's not very much, but at least it's a little bit. On top of that, we had multiple requests by manufacturers of chemicals that want to use the solution but don't have the right software. And we had multiple requests by software developers and consultants, and just another one sent an email yesterday that they want to start to implement the software, the interface, and they want info on how to start. There's a big but. Some companies are not convinced and will not be convinced because they fear there might be business secrets revealed in the XML file, and this is a fear we cannot really address because, well, whether you either have to believe there's only the information of the safety data sheet, and if you don't believe it, how can we take this fear away? We can show them the data, but we already did, and they still say they don't believe us, so what can we do? And on top of that, a lot of companies say that if they export the data, this simply costs them money. Even if they have the interface implemented, the people using the interface have to learn how to use it, and this costs time, and time is money, and they don't see a direct positive effect, so they are not very motivated to join this. What's my take-home message? I see SDP Transfer as a success. We set the technological foundation. I already would say it's transferable to different sectors because, why is it not? It's just we transfer the safety data sheet, and the safety data sheet is not the thing of the construction industry or the chemical industry. It's, used in every industry which uses dangerous substances. But skeptics still need to be convinced. And last but not least, and this might be this is my most important point, the downstream users and end users will have to ask for the data, or else nobody will provide the data. This addresses the last point from the slide before. And that's it. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks very much for interesting and presentation that was differently focused, that it coming from or aimed at a specific sector and focusing on a specific area related to the management of dangerous substances, being the access management and use of safety data sheets. Do you have any questions that you'd like to put? Right.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Yes, I think we need a European format for SDS in the future because, of course, now with e-tools, with internet, we need data with not only in PDF. I'm sure this is an improvement we need for the future. You face it, we have the same problem as you when we start research and we bypass the problem. We decide to use image recognition tool. So in Serich, you open PDF, SDS in PDF. You put you push the button, and after that you have this information into an Excel or XML standard, and that's our solution for this problem. I think it's really yes, it's maybe easier to bypass this, because we ask our partner from chemical industry, and when we propose a standard in XML for safety data sheet, they say no, we have a lot of things to do. So that's why we bypass the problem with image recognition, and it works.
Yes, it works, but there are limits. We also do this, and sometimes it works really good, and sometimes it doesn't really work at all. So yeah, that's kind of why we need the standard, as you say. I totally agree, as I wouldn't be here. Yes. The image recognition is especially a problem for not so easy data points. It's obviously quite easy for the labeling, but if you try to do this with the composition, for example, it's just a big mess. It doesn't work at all. Yeah.
You were very humble concerning Gisbau. I wanted to highlight two things that are unique, I think. You can search for product names, and this is a big difference for a layman, whether you have to know the name of the chemical substances or you can simply look for Igonosk delta B or whatever, yeah. And 20,000 is a lot. And second, this work instructions that are automatically generated in 16 languages, for the workforce in the construction industry, extremely important, and in the languages of the main group nationalities of the construction workers. So not only the EU languages, but Turkish, Russian, I think. Yes. Yeah, and so and this is, I think. I only wanted to support you. You can, perhaps you can say how many people you need for that.
We are, oh, now I have to calculate, 10 people or 8? 8 people in our department. And we have a software consultant or software developer, which is basically one person. But this solution is quite old. So we did do this since 1990, I think. So when I was 4 years old, this whole Gisbau thing started. Yes, and I definitely agree that I was quite short on that this whole Gisbau tools topic, but I didn't have the time to tell you anymore. So yeah, that's the reason.
Question at the end.
How do you get these micro enterprises use this output? Because that, for a construction entrepreneur, they are not really in the middle of IT usage and things like that. How can you mainstream it?
Yeah, that's true. we try to bring them to use them by giving them the tools to use them. The tools I explained in the beginning of my presentation are able to use this data. So if you, for example, maintain your hazardous substances register with our e-tool, you can use this XML data without a problem. There aren't any other software solutions I know of that already use this. So this is another thing we as the Bilbao have to promote more, so that the software the end users use also use this data.
I have a question regarding transferability. Maybe I'll start with the national level. Are there any efforts to transfer this type of initiative to other sectors within the BGs, for example? And how do you see the issue of transferability to other countries? Are there any specificities that you would say would be an obstacle to that?
Yes, I think it's very transferable. In Germany, we also the automotive industry is in the process of transferring the solution into their own world, I should say. They define themselves a third subset, which is nearly all the data points of the safety data sheet. And this is the way to go for all the other industries, I think. Everybody should take their own subset of the whole safety data sheet, because it's just at the beginning too much effort to implement the whole safety data sheet. And maybe in, I don't know, 5 years or something, we can implement the whole safety data sheet. And regarding the question for other national regions, at the moment, only the German legislation is fully covered. But it is possible, very easily possible, to extend the format for other regulations. So just join this steering committee and join the GitHub group and discuss this, and this is no problem. We can implement this without any problem at all.
Right.
No, sorry.
That was a nice point to finish on, with a call for people to join the International Steering Committee. We'll now move on to the final presentation of the afternoon, which again is a slightly different tool, the Subsport e-tool, which focuses on one aspect of the prevention and control approach, which is the substitution of dangerous substances. This is a project, this is a European level project, which has involved partners from Germany and Spain and others. There are going to be 2 people presenting different aspects of this. Firstly, Dolores Romano, who was heavily involved in the initiation and the development of the project, and then worked for the trade union Health and Safety Institute ISTAS in Spain at that point. She subsequently left. And then the ongoing development of the tool is going to be presented by Isabella Bunduk. Is that Bunduk? My German pronunciation is terrible. I'll have to. Oh, Polish. Well, my Polish is even worse. So, my Northern Europe linguistic pronunciation has a lot to be desired. Who is working for the Coppa organization, which in Germany, which is now the lead organization for the Subsport tool. So first of all, we'll start with the developmental part, and I'll hand over to Dolores. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah, for inviting me to present, for inviting us, the Subsport team, to present our tool, which we are very proud, I think, of it. This is how it looks. If you can find it, it's subsport.eu. And the aim of this tool was to, as it states here, to move toward safer alternatives. We wanted to develop what we felt was missing at that time. This is 2010. That was a resource for finding safer alternatives. We wanted to help companies fulfill their substitution legal requirements. We wanted to offer also a resource for authorities, environmental and consumer organizations, scientific institutions, and promote the sharing and exchange of practice. So we had a lot of goals there. The key features, the core of the tool, is the case story database. When we finished the tool, I don't know if these are the data when we finished the tool or the actual tools, but we had over 300 case stories of substitution experiences. I hope it works and can show it online. We believe that companies need to get inspired. We were not giving them the final solution, but we were trying to provide inspiration, showing that other companies similar to theirs from their sector had found alternatives, and we wanted to show that they could also do this. So the core of the database is the case study database, and you can search by name, by cast number. I'll put one of the NGO favorites, which is DHP, and then you can see, you can find results by chemical, or you can search also by sector. And for example, for DHP, we have here some examples of substitution of, I don't know, for example, cables, floorings, a kindergarten, healthcare sector. So what you find, if you look at one of these case stories, you first find an abstract, and if you are interested in this abstract, then you can. You're not interested, you can just go to find another solution, or if you are interested, you can read more, and then you find much more information about the substances that were substituted, the alternative substances, other type of alternatives. We carried out a small hazard assessment. The team that was uploading the cases, we did a little hazard assessment. There was a substitution description and an evaluation from the team, and then information if you wanted to contact. For example, this was provided by Hewlett-Packard, and here was a contact name at the company if you want to contact them. This I'll tell you more about a little more about this later, but we developed a methodology for accepting or not accepting substances as alternatives in the database, and we were very transparent about this. And well, I'm not going to show where it's easy. You can find it easily, but well, the easiest are the substances that are already classified as CMRs. Well, we do not accept them, but we also include other carcinogens from other sources. But there may be, for example, substances that today are considered endocrine disruptors, but at that time we did not check this. But as it's very clearly stated what we considered, it's quite transparent, and then companies can decide if they think it's a good substitute or not. And okay, another key feature is the restricted and priority substance database. Here we compiled information from 34 lists. These are a governmental list, list from NGOs, from trade unions. Here you can see them. EU regulatory list, international regulations, like the restricted list from Boots or from H&M, from Volvo. They have their own list, and this actually has been, I think, very successful. That we had a lot of visits. This was one of the, I think, the most visited part were the case stories, but then it was this list, because companies not only want to know which are the substances that are under regulation, but also which ones are on the spot for the future. So. Another key feature were our trainings and seminars. I'll advance a bit with this. We developed a training methodology which was very participative. We developed both a trainer's manual and then a manual for participants. And what we wanted to do is to help participants get started in the substitution process. It was just an introduction to substitution, to open their minds and understand what is the process, which are the stakeholders involved, which are the main steps, and introduce them to the existing tools. They were quite successful. I think, Isabella will tell you later on about the final evaluation, but I think that by 2013 we had conducted around 18 training sessions in Spain and France, in Denmark and Belgium and Germany and Sweden. Romania, our colleague Raluca's over there also, and also, although this was an EU project, we got a lot of interest and have also done trainings in El Cairo, in Algeria, and another. So other features that you can, anybody interested in substitution can find are substitution steps, which and with tools for each step, the regulatory framework for substitution. Then we have also help for identifying substances of concern, and a whole section on substitution tools. These were the developers, Cooperationsstelle Hamburg, who was the coordinator of the project. Actually, Lothar was the coordinator. Then we had Chemsec, which is an environmental NGO from Sweden, Grundmich, which is a consultancy in Denmark, and ISTAS, a trade union health and safety institute in Spain. And we also had the external expertise from the Toxic Use Reduction Institute in the United States. Since 2013, it's only Cooperationsstelle who is running the tool. We had the financial support from LIFE, from BAUA, and also from the Ministry of Environment in Austria. So the strengths, I believe we had a very good project team because we had different stakeholders. We had expertise from the environmental movement, from trade unions, from consultancies, from Coop had already a long experience with developing some substitution tools like a clean tool. I believe that our multicultural team was also good in order to develop something that could really be used internationally by different countries. We had a very good expert committee with authorities, for example, the OSHA. Elke was part of our expert committee. We had companies. We had the EEB where I work now. So this expert committee also gave us a lot of input on during all the process since the beginning. I think that transparency is also a strength, that we say what the tool does and what it does not do, and everything is very clearly stated, all the methodologies, all the sources of information, so anybody knows exactly what they are, everybody sees that what is exactly the alternative that we are including, and can afterwards decide if they think it's a good or not a good alternative. It has different entry points for different levels of information, also for more expert users or for layman users, and of course the case study approach we believe was the most important. Weaknesses, the long-term sustainability. We were unable to find any relevant financial support after 2013. Isabella will talk later about the future of the tool. It was very difficult, and is very difficult to convince user companies to provide their substitution examples. Or it is easy to have companies that market an alternative to want to provide, but the users, it is very difficult because, well, they don't see the value, or they don't have time. And another weakness is the issue of all the information on toxicity that is developing so fast, and to keep this updated is really a challenge. So during the development, yes, our main challenges were to chasing companies to get the information from them in order to be able to build the database. And well, it was also challenging the coordination of all partners and activities, but that was Lothar's job. So. We did have a lot of laugh, I think. So the pilot proof, we had an expert committee with very different stakeholders since the first steps they were there. Of course, the partners, we were piloting them. We had before we launched it, we did a pilot proofs with through the trade union, with trade union representatives, and this was also very useful for the user friendliness, especially for non-experts. And then during events with different stakeholders. Until 2013, this is the evaluation, and then Isabella will follow on. But right now, it's an internationally acknowledged portal. For example, we have by 2013, the end of the project. I think it was in full. Had been working for 1 year, and already we had 80 websites that were and reports linking to subsport, because there was nothing like that in that time, and I think there's still nothing like that. And it was the dissemination was highly successful. We already, by the end of the project, we had been at 65 events, which is a lot because we were a very small team. We were I think it was like 6 or 8 salaries behind the project, and I think we accomplished a lot. So now it's time for Isabella.
Okay,
final presentation of the key.
Okay, that way.
Thank you, Sarah, for the invitation and for the opportunity to present the follow-up activities of subsport. My name is Isabella Banduch, and I am a researcher at the Kooperationsstelle Hamburg. Kooperationsstelle is a private company which offers national and international services and studies for the topics of occupational safety and health and environmental protection. Since 2012, I have been working in the subsport project, and since 2013 in the follow-up project Subsport Textile. Yes. Since March 2013, Subsport is solely run by the Kooperationsstelle. Subsport has been extended with case stories and information specific to the textile industry. Current activities in this area are, among others, the roadmap to zero discharge of hazardous chemicals, an initiative by a group of major apparel and footwear brands, which aims to eliminate the use of groups of problematic substances, and the Greenpeace Detox campaign, both launched in 2011. The big global textile brands have compromised to eliminate the releases of hazardous chemicals from the supply chains and products until 2020. So far, 79 companies have signed the Greenpeace commitment, and according to this commitment, textile companies have to publish substitution case stories on Subsport. For the Greenpeace team, it's important that these case stories contain a hazard assessment made by a qualified person. For example, Subsport team. In addition to the already existing Subsport portfolio, the following major chapters have been added. Textile-specific case stories from enterprises and literature, including descriptions of alternatives, substances and technologies, in German and English in the case story database, incorporation of textile-specific restricted substances lists into the restricted and priority substances database, sector-related alternatives identification and assessment training session prepared together with the Federal Association of the German sport goods industry. Yes, subsport textile was developed for funding from the German Environmental Foundation. Of the project Serbia Substitutes, selected content of the Subsport website has been made available in Serbian, following the Subsport concept for the alternatives identification and assessment trainings, including elements of the SIN list. 2 training sessions were prepared for Serbian industry and for NGO representatives. The project was run in cooperation with Alhem, and it received financial support from the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Belgrade. Yes. There are a few points that I would present in connection with the content update. The news section is still active. The newsletter section was conducted in the framework of a Subsport Textile project. One of the Subsport sponsor has promised to hold the legislation part of Subsport up to date. However, there's nothing happened. We provided several training sessions in the framework of follow-up projects, and not only. We still get substitution case stories to be uploaded on Subsport, mainly from the textile industry. Referring to the software update, it's very important to keep the software version up to date. Subsport was repeatedly victimized by hackers. We lost, for example, some data from one of the supporting programs containing web statistics. Ongoing maintenance process, including staff work and software update, costed Coppa Italia about 260,000 euro in the last 4 years. In the near future, probably at the end of this year, Subsport moves to the German Federal Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and Subsport Textile becomes a separate and independent portal. And as Dolores already said, Subsport is an enclosed portal. We counted more than 1,000 websites and reports linked to Subsport. 371 substitution case stories are published in the case story database. 25 training sessions were provided by the Subsport members with very good feedback. Yes, and web statistics, you will see them on the next page. Yes. Yes. And you can see that every year Subsport is visited by more than 30,000 visitors. And that's all. Thank you for the attention.
Okay, thanks very much for that presentation of the final presentation, which I said was quite a different kind of tool and different development, focusing more on one aspect of prevention, and with some very, I think, interesting features in terms of partnership to try and get sustainability through linking up with an external campaign. This time a very large campaign by Greenpeace, and also the transference to adapting to another third country, in this case Serbia, outside of the EU. Do you have any questions regarding the Subsport tool in particular for Isabella or Dolores before we open up to a more general discussion?
Just a quick question, just around data protection. Is there any way, say, that the people who access the likes of your tool can, in other countries, in terms of the government organisations that are trying to promote good practice and raise awareness and so on, can tap into that? Or is it all locked down through data protection? I'm just thinking, for example, in Ireland, if we knew there were certain companies accessing that tool to find out about, possible alternative chemicals or whatever, that we could help, we could get involved. But I'm sure data protection might be an issue, is it?
So if you want to answer.
I think we are very transparent about the information that is provided, and perhaps the reasons why companies do not want to provide their case stories is because of data protection. But for authorities to join the project, I think that would be great. No problem. I don't know if I got well your question. No, okay. Okay.
In one of your first slides, you say you support companies in fulfilling substitution legal requirements, but you can also substitute a hazardous substance by a less hazardous substance, which is not a legal requirement. Is that also included?
Yes, of course. We want our aim was to promote safer alternatives, but we were telling companies that you have some legal requirements regarding CM carcinogens and mutagens, for example, and we can help you fulfill your obligation to substitute if it's technically feasible by looking for case stories and for alternatives through our database. But of course, our aim was to provide safer alternatives, the safest as possible. Yeah.
Yes, I recall a study we made quite a lot of years ago, where we asked small and large companies about substitution and how they worked with substitution. And as I remember it, small companies said, well, we listen to our suppliers and do what they tell us to. So the suppliers seem to be very important driver. Have you involved the suppliers in some way in Subsport?
Well, actually, at our advisory group, we had a chemical supplier of biocides. Yeah, and actually, many case stories came through suppliers because they wanted to promote their alternatives, so they would supply us with case stories, not only with chemicals. Yeah.
If there are no other specific questions, I'd like to open up to a more general discussion, and I'm going to start off with a query that I've got, which relates to an issue that you raised during the presentation, which was that you'd had a hacking attack, and one of the issues raised by the various presentations today is sensibility or concern over the confidentiality of information and not wanting to share it. So I wondered, of all the tools that have been presented, whether you were kind of conscious of this particular risk as you were developing the tool, and what kind of measures or precautions or steps have you had to think about in this aspect?
Sorry to take too much of this talking space, but actually the tool I will present tomorrow, Kemiguiden, we started using an IT platform which was considered good at that moment, and that was developed by a consultant we worked together with. After maybe 5 years or something like that, we had what they call web spiders that crawled into this platform and deleted some of the pages. We could recover the pages, so they weren't lost forever. But what we had to do, we actually initiated the transfer of the entire website to a new IT platform. And that is my experience, that kind of transfer to new platforms is something we had to do every now and then, or upgrade or something like that, because the development seems to be like that. Or Lisa, what you say?
I agree. I work for Prevent, who maintains Kemiguiden. So it's, as someone said earlier, if you're working with e-tools, it's an ongoing process. You can't release something and think that it lives forever. You have to be sure to keep it safe.
And have any of the other tool developers had issues with hacking attacks or other issues?
We didn't. I hope we will not be hacked. But we really made the choice to ban web solution, and for business secret like chemicals inventory. It was a huge decision to ban web technology, but it was the only one for us which guarantee real security.
If I may add, I think the driver for developing new solutions is not only about hacker attacks, it's more about the technical development. For example, we are now transferring websites to more responsive platforms, responsible too, but so they can easily be read in a smartphone. And I think that kind of technical development will probably continue.
We also had a discussion about mobile devices, and we decided to not to develop on these devices because the technology is changing every time, and the cost to develop on mobile is higher, much higher than to develop on web or on PC software hardware. So for the moment, we cannot guarantee sustainability on device mobile because for now, I think there is two solutions like EOS and Samsung. I forget the name of the platform used in Samsung. But there is two solutions. But before that, there was a lot of solutions, and if you need to develop for each device, the cost could be very, very high. So we decided for now not to develop on mobile.
Yes, we fortunately haven't been hacked yet as well. I hope this will never occur. But the issues we have are less about the security, more about the privacy. When I talked about the hazardous material register, at the moment we have a cloud solution, which is, obviously it's in the cloud, but we are kind of moving back from that, so that you download your hazardous material register onto your local machine, because all of this privacy issues. And it's kind of difficult to explain because obviously it would be possible to assure the safety of the data if we move to our servers to a data center of the Bilbao where they assure that's safe and nobody will look at it. But on the other hand, this makes it very complicated to add content or maintain the platform on a technical level. So our IT provider would have then to, fill out a form or something like that to access the website and change something. And yes, because of that, we will most likely, it's not the decision is not final, but we will most likely move back again from the cloud solution. And concerning the mobile tools, I said we have mobile tools, but this only means we have a responsive website. We don't really have an app. We had an app, an iOS app, and we stopped developing it because, as you said, it's just it's too much to do. It's very cost and time intensive. And we stopped doing it. Especially if you want to be on Android and iOS. In the past, it was very difficult to do both at the same time. It's now a little bit easier, but still there are some things you have to think about when you develop for one platform and for the other. And it's not, you don't want to do this on the everyday basis, let's say that. And as I said, our IT partner is a very small company, so we decided to move back from that.
I think the best solution, if you need mobility, is to develop with web responsive solution. You can use it on every mobile devices. But you need a web connection. That's a weakness. But yes, I think if you develop several apps, I was searching Android solution and iOS and maybe the later ones, the future ones. I think it's very, very cost expensive.
I think this is an interesting discussion here because 2 years ago, I think it was, we in one of our eTools seminars, we specifically looked at apps. And I think at that time we had quite a mix. Some people were definitely going down the app-specific approach. Some were taking the responsive web and some were taking not so responsive, if you want to call it that way, more traditional web platforms. I think it'd be an interesting question to ask again. If we started asking the same question, has the path changed? Is technology changes pushing you or encouraging responsive web approaches?
Just to respond to that, we can see still a big increase, especially for our websites. We do a lot of more like website solutions, not maybe tools, but products where you can access information on different industries and safety-related issues. And we can see that it's still increasing, that users are using their mobile phones. It's still going up. But I think that might be a Swedish thing too, because people are very attached to their mobile phones and they expect everything to work in their mobile phone. So we have to sort of adjust to that. But yeah, that might be a bit cultural, actually.
Yeah, and just to add to that, actually, we did some analysis of data traffic and the types of devices that people are visiting our web platforms on, and for the first time around this time last year or last summer, it went above 50% in terms of access via a mobile device, a smartphone. And I think that's not unusual. That's pretty much the case globally in developed countries, and that trend will continue. In a year, 2-3 years time, that will probably go to 65-70%. I mean, that's pretty much guaranteed. It's not a possibility. So if you are developing any kind of web tool, if you're not developing one that's at the very least responsive to a mobile device, a smartphone, you probably need to think about that. It's a very basic requirement at the moment and from now on.
Now, everything we are developing on web in NRS is responsive, of course. By example, the new website of Serich is responsive. And when we look at data with Google Analytics, by example, only 5% of users are using mobile devices for risk assessment because in fact, this is a long-term process, assessing risk. You cannot do it just on your mobile phone in 5 minutes. So you need to use your laptop to deal with a huge amount of data, to write many things. So in fact, we have a small part of users using our website on mobile devices. It's about 5%. So that's information from maybe.
I have to agree there. I don't really have the numbers, but when we developed our different tools, our different modules, we tried to think about whether or not it's probable that anyone will access it using a mobile device, and something like the said hazardous material register, where you have to fill out a lot of data. You will most likely don't do this using a mobile device, especially not a smartphone. Maybe a tablet, but not a smartphone, because it's just not feasible. You will use a laptop or a desktop PC. That said, there are other information points where mobile access is very probable. So we try to take this into account and develop our solutions in this way. So it's kind of intelligent. Yes.
Thank you very much. We have heard today that we have a huge amount of information and knowledge for this area, and I think that companies need still paper, they need still websites, and they still other traditional things. But we have any discussion about robotic tools or virtual reality tools. Future is coming, and we have to understand that these tools are important for our youngster when they start to discuss about these things. Thank you.
Are there any people here who are going down the line of virtual reality tools? I saw one example of a training tool in VR at the World Congress, and that was in Singapore. But are people taking this approach at all? Is there anything going on in your countries on virtual reality or similar tools?
Yeah, I don't see for now the need of virtual reality in chemical risk assessment, but maybe in the future. But we have one experience in ENRS in another risk assessment. It was how to train conductors with some devices, and specifically the risk when your machine is I don't know the word, so is like when you have conducting problems. So we develop this kind of device with different screens and a reality to train conductors on these devices. And it works. We transfer it on a private company, and this company use it every week for the learning.
Comment from the private sector, so to say. As far as I know, or I came across virtual reality only in training so far. It's used once in a while, but very costly, and but very well perceived and taken by the trainees. What you see sometimes is interactive web solutions. You mentioned that we have in Germany the so-called nanoramas, which are interactive tools you can use for training purposes, but for risk assessment, I would not see a need for virtual reality. However, I agree to you. I think the younger generation, they really go for apps or very interactive formats in the internet. There's another example in Germany, also a training app actually used in the craftsmanship area, the so-called master courses. There is, for example, it's outside the chemical business, but it's used for training of those people doing this master course, and that is obviously very well perceived and taken, and very well accepted, and it helped obviously really to make them more people pass the exams, because about 50% of them failed, and that was the reason in Germany to develop such an app, and it seems to be quite successful. But as mentioned, this is in the area of craftsmanship overall, not in chemical business.
Yeah, just to say that we tried some years ago to apply augmented reality in chemistry, chemical industries, or any sector that works with chemicals, and it was not easy, but some companies were interested. Maybe I couldn't finalize the proposal because I'm not an expert in it. It was not easy, but I think it will come soon that we will apply it in chemistry, like augmented reality or image recognition. Yeah, Lotta maybe remembers the proposal.
Yeah, I think so too, that augmented reality has a big future in our industry. I don't think virtual reality so much, because where would you use virtual reality outside of training. But augmented reality with image recognition is quite a powerful tool, I think. When you work, for example, with a chemical and you just look at it and you have Google Glasses or something like that, and the glasses recognize the chemical you're working with and provide you with the relevant information of this chemical. You see directly what kind of information you need in order to work safely with it. I think this will come in the, I don't know, it's kind of difficult to make an assumption here, but it will come, I think so. There was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot it. I'll come back.
There's just one point I wanted to make about training, because listening to the presentations from the different tools, there were some questions on how do you train people to use the tools, or how do you train people generally to perform a risk assessment or to put in place practical measures at the workplaces. I was, when following the Subsport project, for example, I found particularly interesting the feature on training for substitution, really practically going through the steps and trying to see how do I do it in practice when I have an example of a chemical that I use at workplaces. So I think from what I heard from the presentations and from what I retained, how to train, how to raise awareness, how to help people implement something like this is an important issue. In the preparations of our campaign on dangerous substances, this is also an important topic that came up from many stakeholders, the training at the workplaces to do this. You have the tools, but how do you train people to use them?
Yeah, we took the decision not to train about the tool, the use of the tool. For us, a good tool, you don't need training to use it. But we decide to train people how to realize a good risk assessment. That's the most important, and we develop tutorials for that. If someone wants to know how it works with Serich, you can download it. You switch into the different buttons, and he could see videos or use frequently asked questions. But we don't offer specific training for that. But we offer specific training in order to understand the limits of the tools. We train the people. Sometimes when you have a good e-tool or user-friendly e-tools, the people think this is the reality. This is 100% 100% sure. This is the truth. And most of the efforts on training is put on this field. How you can use the tool, what's the limit, and how can you transfer the result of assessment into a real action in your company. So we decided not to train about the use of only the tool.
Right, is there enough other questions? I've got one final question, and then we'll move on into the conclusions of this afternoon. So my question was, it's been clear from all the presentations that to develop an e-tool on dangerous substances necessitates a long-term commitment to the development and then the maintenance of the tool. How have you gone about convincing, if you had to, those at the top of your organisation or other funding organisations, not only of the initial development, but of this ongoing commitment for funding that's necessary to keep the tools alive and keep them up to date and maintained?
That's kind of easy for me to answer because we don't really have to do this. We have, since we are quite old, we have a very good reputation in Germany in general, I think. Our tools were among the first tools for this whole thing, and yeah, the reputation is simply quite good. So we don't really have to ask for money. It's just comes to us. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the same like in France. So we have money coming every year. So, but it's important to have in mind that when you develop a tool, I think if you spend €1 on IT, you have to spend €1 on communication or information. It's the same amount of costs. I think if you really want your tool is used, and after that, I estimate between 10% and 20% of the initial cost per year to maintain only IT problems, IT improvements. So after between 5 or 10 years, I think you double the price of initial cost on your IT solution.
Before you start developing an e-tool, you have to think about the future, because the following could happen. It happened in the Netherlands. We gave money to develop an e-tool, and then after several years, we had no money left, and we decided to give this tool to a company, a private company, and they could give it to everybody who wants to use it. But of course, this company could ask money. First it's free, and then in a few years it starts asking money, and that's a problem. So you have to think before you start developing, what are you going to do in the future? How will you make sure that the people can use it for free?
I would just like to add something, referring to that point. If you see who in France and in Germany develop these tools, they have, let's admit, also a kind of obligation, or let's say it's in their, not obligation, but they are expected more or less to do it a little bit. So they say you won't find any tool on the ministry side, but it's more in the federal institute or in the prevention sector where we put it, just also in order to keep a certain sustainability.
Yeah, that's true, of course.
Well, I think for subsport it was a bit different, but perhaps my colleagues developing can have different opinions. I think that first we really wanted to push forward the issue of substitution in Europe. So I think the project was successful in this way, and then none of us were a big authority with big funds to support it. But after the years, the issue is that BAWA is taking over. So I think it has been successful because I mean, if BAWA wants to take it over, it's because it's worth it. So we have not been successful to find people wanting to give money for the consortium or for Cooperación Stelle to maintain it. We have not been successful at all, although there's a lot of interest, like ECA, for example, says it's very interesting. There's an OECD working group on substitution that's very interesting. It is very well known in the States, internationally, but we didn't find anybody wanted to support this frame, but I don't know if you, please.
Yeah, after a lot of discussions about the future of this tool, I have a simple explanation. As more complex the situation is, as simpler the explanations get. And it's like with a motorway. Have you ever seen a politician that is on a motorway cutting a scissor and saying this motorway was 10 years very well maintained? No. Sexy for any funding organization is the development of a tool, but maintenance is not. And that's what we underestimated. If you are working in the public sector and have a long-term plan, then this might work well. But if you want to convince someone in an organization that gives money for such purposes and projects by telling him or her that maintenance is quite important, then they start to sleep at the table where you discuss with them. Maintenance is really, it looks like, no. So please don't take it too serious what I said, but after many experience, I have to reduce it to the simple fact that this is not attractive to keep an instrument alive. Although it's more, as you said, it's the value of a developed tool will be zero if you don't keep it, if you don't maintain it, and after 5 years you probably have 90% of the content exchanged, not of the system and the basics, but you need permanent maintenance, and this is something really not attractive.
Just to add to that, I think it's important to, when you are doing maintenance, that you also add something new. So you keep your software new, you keep the look new, you keep the information new, you add some features that are sexy, as you said. I think this is very important, and this assures, in a way, a little bit that you get the money. If you keep everything the same, it just becomes boring with time. I think it's it's a human thing.
I think we'll move on here, and what I plan to do now is I'll try and summarize some of the discussions and what we've heard today, and then we can open that up to give input. One of the things I found enjoyable was that we're describing, the e-tools work in dangerous substances as old. I think this probably is the first area where work on electronic tools and databases on OSH, this is the area, and we're talking about so old, back to 1999 and before, and this for us is it shows how fast technology is changing. What we heard today was very much a variation of approaches, of focus, of platforms. We had good practices approaches, sector-specific approaches. We had a good range of tools described. One factor that came out, I think, for me, was there is a sensitivity over this data, the end-user data, maybe also the manufacturer data. And we heard that for at least two tools, you had to download something and you stored the data on your computer. You don't want a cloud solution. This is nervous. And maybe there's a barrier here to the use and development of tools. If people are nervous about their data, are they going to be using the tool? We heard that very strongly there's a need for a collaborative approach in the development of the tools. Suppliers, manufacturers, end users, worker groups, legislators, enforcing authorities. This doesn't make life easy, but it's essential to have all the stakeholders involved in the project, whether it's a scientific steering group or a technical steering group or whatever. There's got to be an engagement with the end user, and you've got to close the feedback loop. We're hearing that if you're not careful, you'll get somebody writing terrible reviews for you in the Play Store or whatever. And you've got to be engaging with these end users, and particular, I think, in the delivery of training. I say not necessarily training to use the tool, but training in the process for which you will use the tool. The tool's got to be user friendly because this is a very complex topic area. And we heard, good FAQs and the use of starter packs. These are very good ways of being accessible. A very specific point we had was about the format of safety data sheets. and what can we do in this area? The promotion of tools is very, very important. We heard about having events, using social media, LinkedIn, and also the trade press. We don't, of course, have to start from scratch. If you are going to develop a tool, we've got many examples, much experience here. So it's not like if you want to develop a new one for your state or whatever, you don't have to go back to square one. Perhaps the biggest challenge, establishing a tool as live, ongoing, maintained, updated, sexy even. This is challenging, potentially expensive, and especially so if you want to keep the tool free to that end user. Data security and IT security is an issue, and this is something that has to keep developing. You can't just put on the platform and stop. It's something that's ongoing. Apps are expensive, was a message we were getting, and we're looking at how different platforms are working with responsive websites compared to apps or to more traditional systems. But it's interesting that the data-heavy needs for dangerous substances doesn't exactly encourage the use of mobile devices, perhaps. And finally, last point, the future is here. We have, we are looking very closely. We are talking about augmented reality, virtual reality. These are coming much faster. And the question is, how do we build on them and use them effectively for prevention? That's what I noted down in 3 hours of discussions. I would open it to everybody and anybody. Would you add in or argue with me, please?
I agree with your conclusion. That's not the point. But perhaps I missed something. But the purpose of the seminar is to share experiences and information development, etc. We heard some good lectures, and tomorrow we'll get more. In the Netherlands, we have also e-tools. Perhaps it's an idea to send the e-tools we have, something, the name, the website, short summary to you, and you can collect them from all participants and share it with us again.
Well, that's a good question. What we will produce out of this is what we call a seminar summary. Now, I think we had on the agenda some of the links on the from the presenters tools. I mean, we have no problems if you have accessible tools, and we can put things into the documentation. Because I think, for example, the delegates, everybody attending, comes on an attendance list. So that would not be, I don't think, a challenge to put a URL next to your name if you have some tools to provide for. So we would welcome to know about any other tools you have in your member state, particularly relating to dangerous substances.
Yeah, I mean, if you do that, send links as part of what we're developing for the campaign on dangerous substances 2018 to 19 is a sharing of tools that are available, so we can look into whether those can be added to the database that we're developing, and also we can invite anyone interested to provide a short summary of their tool for the OSH Wiki platform that we have. We've already invited the speakers to provide a short summary, but anybody who has an interesting tool that they'd like to have included is welcome to provide us a short article on that. It can be provided in Word format, and then we do the uploading as well. All right, so before, I think I have two final points to make, and then Tim will close and tell you about tomorrow. So my two final points were, I think from all the presentations we had, they mentioned the possibility of transferability of their tools. They made that offer in one way or the other. So I was saying that organisations, institutes thinking of developing their own tool, it would appear that you don't necessarily have to start from a blank sheet of paper. You can approach organisations the organisations who have already developed something and explore the possibilities of adapting or building on the tool already being developed. And we'll see the same case tomorrow. We'll see the Chemigiden, if I pronounced that correctly, tool tomorrow from Sweden, and that's being used as the basis of a shortened version that EU-OSHA is going to produce to launch during the European campaign on dangerous substances 2018 to 19. So that was the first point. And the second point I would just mention again, it was mentioned that in regard to data sheets, it could be useful to have a European EU standard format for data sheets. So I don't know if that's the kind of political integration that would be acceptable at the moment, but that's but that from users of data sheets, having that seemed to be a request. So I just thought I'd underline that. And so that.
Is there anybody else who wants to have a say for anything else, how we've summed up today? Yes, please, over there. Yeah.
Okay. I think the European data sheet is a great idea, but we shouldn't overextend it. European data sheets have the tendency to get long. Get the essentials, and this might provide us with a European database, which will make things easier to protect workers and people concerned by chemical products and so on, but make it simple, keep it simple, and every country can then extend the data sheet complying to the legislation which is applying to the country itself.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think we will, just to tell you about tomorrow, is we start the important bit, 9 o'clock, please. We start at 9 o'clock, and we will be back in here, and what we will do is we will have a couple of presentations from Sweden and from the agency, and we will go into group work where, as smaller groups, it's easier to discuss. I'm aware that in a big group like this, it's quite difficult to have fluid conversation. But we really value your input, and we are very glad that we have a very good, knowledgeable group here. So I would say here, thank you very much, especially to the presenters who've given an excellent overview and of their tools and the work that's been going on. And we hope they're staying with us tomorrow to keep giving us good input. And thank you very much to all of you, and we will see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Thank you.